Welcome back. We're going to get to a new segment in just a second, but I just wanted to say this. We spoke to the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee a minute ago, Devin Nunes of California, who I think is an honorable person. And he is obviously empowered by his position in Congress and by voters really to have access to any intelligence that he wants to. He has read the full text of the application for the FISA warrant that allowed the government, the Obama administration, to spy on Carter Page and the Trump campaign. He says the parts that have been redacted do not in any way threaten American national security, that it's merely butt covering on the part of the bureaucracy. We ask the obvious question, which is, why don't you just tell us what's in it? Let the public decide. Let the public judge. In the commercial break, I got an interesting text I'm going to read on the air from a very informed person in Washington who said this, and I'm quoting, Dianne Feinstein entered the CIA torture memo, so-called, into the record in the Senate and was protected by the speech and debate clause. Any Republican with access to the FISA warrant could do the same. Complete immunity awaits them. I believe that to be true. Again, this just happened in a commercial break. We haven't checked it, but I think that's right. But I will say one more time, if you know what is in the redacted portions of that application, please send it to us. The public has a right to know. There's no excuse for withholding that from the public. Let us decide. Now to another big story. In the response to the 9/11 attacks, Congress passed a law, a famous one, requiring the adoption of a real ID across America. A lot of the hijackers had fake IDs. The real ID imposes various requirements on photo identification to make it harder to counterfeit. Beginning in 2020, you will need a real ID to fly on an airplane, for example. These IDs should make us safer and our elections more secure, so of course the left is totally opposed to them because illegal immigrants won't be able to get them. Joe Veronese is an attorney from San Francisco, a candidate for district attorney there, and he joins us tonight. Joe, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So, I haven't checked the vote. I probably should have, but I don't think the Real ID Act faced really any opposition in the Congress because it seemed like such a no-brainer. If you have a government ID, we need to know that it's valid, it's real, it's for American citizens, and it kind of matters. 9/11 showed us that it matters. Why are Democrats suddenly against it? I'm confused.
Well, I think that's why we have a passport. The passport essentially does that. This, however, is basically another attempt by this president to influence an election, and that's why the Democrats aren't for it. First, it was the meeting with the Russians. Then it was the issue with the census question, and now it's the real IDs. It's a requirement that is basically it's a voter suppression strategy that will influence elections by discouraging and preventing special groups such as lower-income people, minorities from actually going to the ballot. And so that's why we're against it.
I'm a little bit confused by this for two reasons. I'll just go in order.
Yeah.
One, you have to be an American citizen to vote in a federal election. So there's nothing wrong, of course, with requiring that only American citizens vote in federal elections. Do you agree with that?
Well, not necessarily in San Francisco. We have a school board election here that we actually allow immigrants to vote in.
In federal elections, it is a law that you have to be a citizen. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
And the second question is, I keep hearing this line that poor people or African Americans don't have IDs. We actually checked the research on that, and it's totally false. There's no large group of people in America that doesn't have a government ID. There isn't one. But I'm wondering if you think it is patronizing for Democrats to say, well, black people somehow can't get IDs. Don't you think that's kind of a slur, actually?
It's not just about IDs. With this, the requirements of the real ID are that you have to have a U.S. passport. And if you look at who has U.S. passports, you're talking about wealthy people, not minorities, higher educated people. And so only, I think, about 42% of Americans actually have U.S. passports. Another problem with this is that it requires you to show proof of residency, where exactly it is that you live. So there's some privacy issues there. And one of those documents is actually a tax document, your IRS taxes. Not even our president will show us his taxes. But this will actually require you to show a document like that.
Okay, so you have to prove residency. I mean, wait, but hold on. So you must be against Social Security numbers, too, I would think.
No, I'm not against Social Security numbers. Social Security numbers serve a specific purpose. This document doesn't serve any particular purpose. This would serve a specific purpose.
Oh, it doesn't. So the U.S.
No, it doesn't.
has
you have U.S. passports.
So we don't have. So but you just, well, hold on. You just said only a minority of Americans have U.S. passports. You're making an argument for and against passports within a minute of each other. I mean, even for an attorney, that's pretty impressive. You just said this is wrong because it requires the use of passports. And in the next sentence, you said people can just use passports. I mean, like. It's
not just the use of passports. I do believe that you should have a passport
but pick
if
a
you
side
want
on the
to travel
passport thing.
abroad, and that's a specific purpose for that specific document. So if the government's trying to say you need to be a U.S. citizen to vote, then why not require them to get a passport? This actually requires them to do much more, and it requires the state to do it, which is the problem. Because the next requirement, as you mentioned in your prologue, was that this is going to be applied to voters, and that's where the rubber meets the road.
Well, that's only in my wish, because somehow Democrats are claiming that it's racist to get someone's ID before he votes, but not racist to get ID before he gets welfare benefits or checks into a hotel or gets a job or opens a bank account or flies on an airplane or does anything else in American life. That's not racist. But asking for ID is racist because somehow black people can't get ID, which is the most patronizing, I would say borderline racist assumption I've heard this week, right?
Well, no, I mean, we statistically, we have seen that lower minority people and that this ID has been used as a process. Yeah, has been lower income people and minorities, that the requirement for IDs has been a segregation tool historically. And so that's why the Democrats...
lots of things have happened historically, but right now, every lower income person in America has an ID because you can't live without one. You can't get any benefits. You can't participate in any part of American life without a government ID, period. So everybody has a government ID, and Democrats throw up these fake studies, which are totally false. Like, everybody has an ID. We know this, right? Where are these people who don't have IDs?
You shouldn't be prevented from participating in American, every aspect of American life if you're not a citizen of the United States. And that's what this is basically requiring, is that you are a citizen of the United States.
Okay.
That's exactly the point.
Do you think it's racist to require a government ID to get on a plane or check into a hotel?
No, of course I don't.
Oh, you don't. Okay, just checking. Okay, Joe, thank you. Great to see you. I love that. I don't know why. It's hilarious. All right. Our election system is supposed to be safe from efforts by non-citizens to vote, but thousands of non-citizens are already appearing on the voter rolls. You'll hear on other channels that's a myth. It's not a myth. It's true. Some of them are casting ballots. J. Christian Adams is president of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. He joins us tonight with details. So, Christian, we keep hearing that's untrue. It's never happened. Is it true? Prove to us that it's true.
Well, you can go to our website at publicinterestlegal.org and pull up the original records, Tucker, of the dozens upon dozens, hundreds upon hundreds of people that are getting onto the voter rolls from Russia, Canada, Mexico. And some of them are tragic stories. Refugees from Sudan who said, I told them I wasn't a citizen, but they kept pushing me under motor voter to register to vote, even though I told them I wasn't a citizen.
Well, I mean, how does that happen? I thought that there would be, since it is a federal law barring non-citizens from voting in federal elections, there would be some mechanism to prevent it. It seems like there's a mechanism to encourage it.
Right. It's the broken motor voter system. What happens when you go into any DMV office is they're pushing you. And in places like Pennsylvania, we know that there was a glitch for 2 decades where non-citizens were getting on the rolls. We just published a report called Stealing the Vote about Pittsburgh, where non-citizens were getting on the rolls. They were voting. They were begging to be removed when they got their citizenship applications because they could go to jail. And so what was happening was people were marking, yes, I'm a citizen, but they were from Russia, or they were simply lying over and over again and voting. College students and get out the vote drives were registering and voting, even they're from other countries. The system does not have a check. That's what people need to understand. There's no verification. It's an honor system, and that's why so many aliens are getting on the rolls.
Exactly. And the same people who lecture us about the sanctity of our democracy and the efforts of foreign countries to subvert it are the same ones pushing this garbage. Christian Adams, thank you for the work that you do on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Well, the group